Hodera is okay?
Sorry?
Surname, pronunciation?
Hodera. Amazing. Amazing. Yours is not easy too.
Yes. That's right.
Thank you. So first, apologize for the slide. We are not really, a PowerPoint expert, so I've seen the one before, looks much better. So we'll go directly to the conversation. I'm going to talk to you about Africa, e-commerce, and Jumia. Just a few things about Africa. I think it's a big opportunity. There may be some misconceptions about the size of the opportunity. Africa, for some of you who know, it's 1 billion people today. It's going to be 2 billion people later. Nigeria, for example, is 200 million people. It's going to be the third most populated country in the world after India and China in 2050. And many people have access to the internet. So the question is not the percentage. The question is that it's an absolute number that is significant. You have more people in Nigeria who have access to the internet than the French population. You have more people who have access to the internet in Africa than the US population. So eventually, the opportunity in Africa is massive, and that's what we are, trying to build: e-commerce for customers in Africa. So we launched the business 5 years ago. We are present now in 23 countries in Africa, basically in most of the places where there are people who have internet access. What we do is that we basically build e-commerce businesses and other businesses around it. So we started 5 years ago with Nigeria, Egypt. Now we are really everywhere, trying to build first a very powerful working for Africans e-commerce solution with all the specificities. So, in Africa, you cannot rely on the post service, you cannot have prepayment. So all those topics are the things that we do, and we try to do it, in a way that is very specific and that builds the trust. Eventually, around this e-commerce business, we have built a lot of businesses. So we do food delivery, we do hotel booking, we can buy a flight, you can top up your phone. We do a fresh grocery delivery in 2 hours. We have a classified website. So around e-commerce, we have built a series of services. And now we have really, put in place some sort of ecosystem where people can go under one brand called Jumia and really fulfill more than just buying products, but actually fulfilling all the different transactions that they need in Africa. And around this, we have our assets that we had to build that are also becoming businesses. So we had to build our delivery. Now we are the largest delivery company in Nigeria because we had to do our deliveries. We had to do our payments. So now our payment solution is open for anyone who wants to do an e-commerce business in Africa, etc., etc. So that's what we are in. We started 5 years ago. We are just at the beginning, and that's the starting of the journey.
Jeremy, yes, that's really amazing. I mean, as discussed, we had the pleasure a couple of years to look at one of these amazing digital conglomerates in Africa. I think for all of us it will be interesting to understand, because it's a very different market. It's not like China, it's not like Eastern Europe, it's not like Europe, it's not like US. Where you will describe the major differences between running a growing digital business in Africa versus this sort of business in Europe?
So one of the differences is that people need e-commerce. I mean, if you are here or I think anywhere in the world, you don't need e-commerce. It's convenient, it's nice, etc. But honestly, you don't need it. I mean, in France, I could live without using Amazon ever in my life. We have all the shops, we have all the stores. It's just it's good, but it's not needed. In Africa, you have 2 malls in Lagos for 20 million people. And you had 2 malls 5 years ago, so it's not something that is changing. And so the need is that people want to buy products, and it's complicated, and it's expensive, and it's unreliable. And so there is a very strong need for e-commerce, like genuine need. Now the challenge is the trust. I think the big challenge is to build the trust, because when you go online, it's not something everyone is used to. There is some scam, and so the challenge for us is not to create the need, is to build the trust. And so there are a lot of things that we do. We have to prepare, people do not prepare, they want to see the products, so we have to do cash on delivery. We have a large number of people offline who go in friends and family and explain how it works. So the challenge is more on building the trust than creating the need.
No, but for example, if you have a Bedouin in Sahara, yes, and he's ordering the new iPhone X, iPhone 10, yes, that how you deliver to him, like how you find the address, how you ship to him, etc. Yes, what's the delivery time?
So when you are outside, you think because there is no credit card, because there is no address, it's impossible. People live every day, and people live there, and they have a life, and they go and they visit friends. I mean, those places are working very well. So what we have to do is to work the way people are used to work. So we have, for example, a large customer service team in every country. When someone places an order, we call and we say, tell us where you live. And they tell us, oh, we live on that road, off that road, behind that place. And this makes sense. You know, we don't need to have a GPS location. It makes a lot of sense. Then if we want to deliver the product, in all the capitals of Africa, we deliver the same day or the next day. It's as fast as if you are in New York. If you live in the middle of the Sahara, to your example, it's going to be more expensive and it's going to take more time. But people here also have, distribution and delivery companies.
How you find a solution for the problem of lack of addresses in Africa? I think one of the things which I went through was that there are no streets, there are no numbers. Yes.
But people know their area. So, for example, our drivers. They are from the area, they know the area. They leave the morning the warehouse. I mean, very practical example. They leave the morning the warehouse, they call and they say, are you home? Because people have not prepaid, remember. So they call and they say, are you home? Your address, is it really in that location? And the person confirm. If you live in this area, you know where it is. You don't need to have an address.
But from the IT management point of view, like, okay, that's two technical questions, but probably we need still to figure out more about it. Where you see the exit of this business? Like, I think it's still all the capital development around Africa companies is not very clear. I mean, the ecosystem is not as well developed as Europe, US, etc. That what sort of exit you can provide to your investors?
So first, our shareholders are what we call technically strategic shareholders. So people who already have business in Africa, who know Africa, and who see value in what we're building that creates synergy. So our shareholders are telco, for example, so MTN, which is the largest telco in Africa, Orange, and Millicom. So they know that one day voice and data will phase out, and there is value for them to build e-commerce. We have other shareholders, which is, for example, AXA. AXA knows that people will need an insurance and that there will not be an insurance agency at every street corner. So they know insurance will go online. So our partners are strategic and they know Africa very well. So they know it's a long-term gain and it's something that creates value over the long term. So in terms of exit, there is not really an exit plan. The point is to build a business, to be here in 50 years, and our shareholders are here also in Africa for the long term. So it's very much a strategic direction rather than a pure 2 or 3 years financial return.
Well, I understand that you are building this group. This is very similar to Alibaba, a little bit to Tencent. It's very Chinese, or it's very Chinese style. Yes, it's a conglomerate. The difference is that this conglomerate is working in also different countries. Yes, China is like a single country. Here we have like 10, 20 countries with different political and macroeconomical and infrastructural issues. That how you manage this complexity. It's a marketplace, e-commerce, fintech, different business models in different countries, which are very, let's say, redundant. Yes, like changing a lot very fast. Yeah.
So first, it's complicated.
Do you feel like a hedge fund manager? Manager?
No, because we operate our business. We operate our business.
In 2009, it's not a hedge fund manager situation.
No, we operate our business. So we have the challenge of operators. I think in Africa, the growth we know that is in Africa is a fast growth. But the reality is that when you zoom in, there are a lot of cycles. And I think when you build a business in Africa, you should never be surprised by surprise. You expect the unexpected. So, last year in Nigeria, we had some devaluations. Now we have our third or fourth election in Kenya. God knows what it will be next year. But this is part of the business. It's not a surprise. So we have a lot of countries. When one is not going well, we have another one. We have a lot of businesses. And I think the value also is that we are quite balanced. No country represents a large share of our business. Every vertical is growing. And so it's quite resilient. Even though last year, for example, Africa had some troubles in terms of macroeconomics, it was quite resilient. Now, how do we manage it? It's complicated. We have a lot of work. Every country has a CEO who is in charge of all the operation in his country. And we work with them every day. It's
a matrix structure. You have country managers and vertical leaders.
Like any organization, we have vertical, we have horizontal, we have diagonal, we have everything, and it's a bit.
In terms of management, how you build the management? Do you import management from Europe, from US, from Asia, or how you deal with the management issues? Or you take locals, you train these nice gentlemen from Africa?
So the management, there are different problematics. I think if you look at a country CEO, I mean, in every country in Africa and of the world, you have great talented people who have been having a great experience or have worked abroad, and all our countries have a local CEO. Nigeria, her name is Juliette. In I don't know, Morocco, it's Larbi. I mean, we have local CEO everywhere, and it's not the hardest thing to find. Junior people, they are very, very, very good. I mean, if you are graduated from a university in Africa, you are as good as any university in Europe. You are, you know internet, you are hungry, you are tech savvy. So the younger people, perfect. Maybe the challenge is the middle management. So having the ability to recruit people who can manage a team of 10, 15 people because they had previous experience working with also teams. Given that there are not so many big corporates in Africa, it's a bit harder. So at the beginning, we were lacking those managers, and now most of our middle managers were former, junior in our company. After 5 years, they are starting, to fill the ranks, and we end up having probably 99% local managers everywhere, because when you countries in Africa are not easy. It's a challenge. I mean, when you work in Lagos, you have to wake up at 5 o'clock to be in the office at 7 o'clock, and it's tiring. So if you come here because you think it's nice and sexy, after 1 year you are drained out. The people who stay here are either very committed for the long time, or they are locals and it's their life and their business. So that's how we build it.
I think yesterday I read that there was a big corruption scandal in South Africa. Yes, close to the government. How serious is this problem? How you manage that issue? I think I saw in a couple of East European investments which we had in our portfolio that we brought a special conduct of behavior to basically make sure that we are clean. Yes, how you deal with these corruption issues in Africa?
I mean, maybe one of the first causes of corruption in some countries is when you are dealing with regulated sectors. We are not applying for a banking license, we are not applying for a telco license, we are not applying for a port license. So I think we are not in this kind of business. We are we're a marketplace, people sell on our platform, so we are in the probably easy part of the economy. Now on a day-to-day basis, which is another kind of challenge, I think it's very simple. You are either straight or you are not. I think as soon as you try to play a little bit smart, it comes back at you. I think there are rules. You have to pay your tax. You have to pay. You have to pay your tax. You have paperwork to fill, and there are some controls and everything. You do it, and I have to be honest. I don't think it's worse than many countries in Europe. I mean, you open your business in probably 99% of the countries in Africa faster than in France, and I've seen the paperwork to pay the tax. It's much shorter than in France. I don't know. I don't think it's a real challenge. I think it's a good excuse to not do business in Africa because people have this misconception. But the reality is that if you just do the things right, it's kind of easy.
And in terms of the stage of digitalization of Africa, how much of the economy is a digital economy? I mean, how much digital media is in media? How much digital retail is in retail? How much digital financial services are in financial services? Can you give us kind of general market overview?
I think the change is happening and it's quite impressive. So 5 years ago when we started, you go at the airport, you take a taxi, he has a feature phone. You go now at the airport in most cities in Africa, the taxi driver has a smartphone. Why? Because there has been this flow of Chinese $50 to $100 smartphone that have completely penetrated those markets. It's a game changer. I mean, we should not underestimate the power that many people now in Africa have the ability to have a quality, affordable smartphone. That's one thing. The second thing is that you have mobile money in most countries that is starting to grow very fast. And again, you will never have, ever, like in any developed country, 4 banks at every corner of a street intersection. It will never happen. And yet people need financial services. You will never have travel agencies. I mean, we don't have travel agency anymore in Europe, but we used to have a travel agency where we were buying our plane tickets. It will never happen. So people naturally go and they have the same needs as everywhere. They want to travel, they want to buy products, they want to exchange money, but they naturally go and they do it online. And it's not a question for them. I mean, my mom still doesn't buy online, and she will never buy online. She doesn't need it. we have our customers in Africa, it's the middle class. It's not only young people, it's 20, 30, 40, 50 years old people, mom who want to have genuine diapers and not fake diapers that they buy on the market. And it just makes more sense. So it's not even a question for the people, it's just coming.
But percentage-wise, it's what? It's like 1%, it's like 5% of the economy is in digital. What will be the...
I think nobody knows. I mean, everybody's
knows.
throwing numbers, but nobody knows. I mean,
And could you disclose some numbers around Jumia, like what's the size of the total GMV? Gross
so we don't publish it. And so we don't say it.
Is it 10? Is it double digit, triple digit?
No, I mean, it's several hundred million, per year. I think what's interesting to your question about penetration and also our size, if you take a country like Nigeria, every e-commerce website is somehow penetrates the market with a category that is the bread and butter. Amazon was books and DVD 20 years ago. Our bread and butter is smartphone. That's what makes people buy for the first time online. In Nigeria, we know very well how many smartphones are activated every year. So at least it's a market we know. We sell 15% of all the smartphones of Nigeria, including online, offline, grey, official, in the street, modern. Jumia alone is 15% of this market. So some categories are already dominated by online. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, because every category, one after each other, is being penetrated by online. Other categories, market size, I mean, numbers are floating, but I don't know if they're real. This one is pretty easy to size.
Great. I think it sounds like really it could be like Jack Ma 2000, yes, when SoftBank decided to invest. That's a big question, and let's keep our things crossed. Yes, let's bet on that. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.